Welcome to Dadograms. Today I'm going to tell a few stories, not to brag or relive glory days, but to leave behind kind of a roadmap. These stories are bucket list moments, things like breaking the sound barrier in an F-16, something I've at least mentioned in the past, but now I'm going to tell the story behind the story. Or like visiting Midway Atoll, one of the most sacred sites in American military history. These two things are almost impossible for anyone to achieve, but I was able to do them. None of these events happened by accident. They came to life because I had a vision long before the opportunity arose, and I was ready when that opportunity came. Both of these events was a collision of preparation and opportunity. Most would say I was just lucky, but I've learned this: you make your own luck. I've always kept a list of things I wanted to do before I kicked the bucket. I started working to accomplish them way back in college. There I was able to skydive, scuba dive, bungee jump, travel across country. And as I grew up, my list grew too. When the Navy moved me to San Diego, I saw hikeable mountains for the first time ever. Remember, I grew up in Kansas where we had the Flint Hills, but they really weren't much for climbing. The moment I saw those mountains all over San Diego County, I made a decision. I was going to climb all of them. And over the next 5 years that I was stationed there, I pretty much did. Since then, I've summited Mount Rainier and Mount Whitney. And with my ever-expanding bucket list, I've got Mount Hood, Mount Fuji, and Kilimanjaro on my future list. My list is a living thing, and it evolves with me. No matter what makes the list, I've learned this: you don't accomplish dreams by accident. They take vision, and they take work. They require a relentless pursuit, and they take preparation. You've got to be ready when your break comes. So let me explain to you how I accomplished a few things on my bucket list that were incredibly hard. First, breaking the sound barrier. Ever since I was a little boy, I dreamed of flying high-speed jets and going to space. To me, Chuck Yeager breaking the sound barrier was one of the coolest things in aviation history, and I wanted to do it too. But like they say, man plans and God laughs, and in this case, I wanted to fly jets, but the Navy had other ideas. I ended up flying helicopters for the Navy, not jets, and that meant I wasn't going to be flying high and fast. But hey, all in all, low and slow is pretty cool too. And in truth, I've never regretted flying helicopters. After all, the woman I decided to marry was already a winged Navy helicopter pilot when I was in flight school. So this just simply meant we were going to have a life together, and that alone was worth it. But still, I had breaking the sound barrier on my bucket list. And just because something seems hard doesn't mean it goes away from that bucket list. I had to figure out how to do it. How? Well, I had to work it. In 2005, I was selected to serve as the flag aide for a Navy admiral. That job put me side by side with a senior leader whose mission was to train carrier strike groups for combat. When I got that job, the admiral told me he was still a flying admiral, flying the F-18 every time that we would go out to sea. And one of my jobs was to make sure that he stayed current and safe. And then he said the most amazing thing of all. He said there are a lot of extra seats open in the back seats of aircraft that are flying off the carriers. If you want to get a larger understanding for how other communities fly and fight in the Navy, you've got my full support to fly in anything you want. Really? Okay. He opened the door big and wide for me, and I stepped right on through. Over the next few years while I worked with him, I flew in the back seat of all kinds of Navy aircraft. The E-2 Hawkeye, the S-3 Viking. This is me in the front seat as we're coming in for an arrested landing. The EA-6B Prowler, the stiffest catapult shot of all during this time, and the F-18 Super Hornet. Again, this is me in the back coming in for an arrested landing. Now, I got catapult shots and arrested landings in each of these aircraft. And if you've ever been on a roller coaster and thought it was fun, I am here to tell you a catapult shot blows them all away. It is the wildest, most exciting ride you'll ever get. After all, you are going from 0 to 160 miles per hour in less than 3 seconds. Crushing. But flying off the carriers, there was a problem. Most of the aircraft I was in couldn't go supersonic, and if they could, they were never configured to do it. You see, the F-18 Super Hornet I got in was called a 5-wet tanker, with 5 huge fuel tanks strapping it down like a plow horse. With that much drag, we definitely weren't going supersonic, though we did have a blast testing out acceleration at low levels. All encouraged by me in the back seat, by the way. So after 5 different carriers, which I was flying off of, I still hadn't busted the number. And when my final cruise ended, my last chance with the Navy had passed. And I was seriously worried that there would never be a chance for me to fly or go supersonic again. But then I guess you could say luck stepped in, or an incredible opportunity that I had a chance to take advantage of. My admiral was selected to lead NSOC, the Naval Strike and Air Warfare Center out of Fallon, Nevada. That's the home of Top Gun, and there, the adversary squadrons flew F-16s. Yes, Vipers, Air Force F-16s that go supersonic and have 2 seats. I joined the Admiral's transition team and asked the aggressor squadron if I could fly with them. And they said, sure. Would you fly in the fleet? And I proudly said, helicopters. And they paused and said, no way, you're not qualified. And I said, yes way, I am qualified. You see, I had gotten all of my qualifications before I ever flew jets off the carrier, including the ejection seat qualification. And in anticipation of all of this, I brought my full training jacket to prove it. I didn't wait to wish for the chance. I had already prepared for it. So the next thing you know, I'm cleared to fly in the backseat of an F-16. I was surrounded by elite pilots joking around, taunting each other as they stepped to the jet. Now I know most of you probably have never sat in an F-16, so let me paint the picture for you. First, when you step into it and sit down in it, your legs are almost straight out in front of you and you lean back at almost 30 degrees in the ejection seat. It feels like you're sitting in a go-kart. And when the canopy comes down and closes down around you, it actually comes together right about hip level. So as you're sitting in the seat and you look down or around you in any way, you have almost complete and total visibility with nothing blocking you. The only thing that blocked my view was the ejection seat right in front of me from the lead pilot. It's almost like sitting on the very tip of a pen and able to look down in all directions. You can't even see the machine that's actually taking you into the sky when you sit in an F-16. It's that good of visibility. Now, because you're going to be pulling high Gs, and in some cases they can pull up to 9 Gs in this aircraft, your arms rest in cradles, one with the throttle over here and the other with the joystick, and it hardly even moves. It's only got just a little bit of deflection in it, and you mainly use pressure to move the aircraft. So it's quite a bit different than you might expect, but it is still very intuitive to fly this particular aircraft. From the back seat, I held on as we simulated killing low-level F-18s on bombing runs. We were pulling 7.5 Gs almost constantly, and though it got close, I never G-locked, though I suspect that was exactly what he's trying to get this helipilot to do. What a blast. And then all of a sudden, it was over. We were heading home. My pilot said that he wanted to simulate an engine loss and glide in for practice. Now, I asked him before the flight if we could go supersonic, and he said that we could probably do it. But it seemed like right now he'd forgotten it or was hoping that I had. So I spoke up again, and I asked, can we still go supersonic? There was this awkward pause, and he said, you still want to do that? My simple answer was, yes. He paused a moment and said something about being low on gas, and we weren't in the Mach corridor, that we were too far away, that we probably couldn't do it, kind of making some excuses. And I didn't argue. I just waited. He knew I wanted it, and I gave him a healthy dose of silence. I'd asked for it several times so far. He knew I wanted it, and it was weighing on him. And a few moments later, I could almost feel the mental shift in him. He says, all right, let's go for it. And we did. We climbed to over 20,000 feet. He pushed us down 20 degrees nose down, kicked in the afterburner, and we started to accelerate. The Mach gauge started climbing through 0.96, 0.98, then 1.0. Surprisingly, there was no flash, no shocking sound of silence, no drama of any kind. The only way you could tell was watching the Mach window in the heads-up display as we went past 1.0. And as I kept watching, the number kept climbing higher and higher. Mach 1.1, Mach 1.2, then Mach 1.29. And finally, with a slight push down on the nose, we hit Mach 1.3. And I had done it. And then he cut out the afterburner and I was instantly thrown forward. The drag on the wings slowing us down, even though we had 20 degrees nose down and we're still in full mill power. Not knowing this, I asked him if he deployed the speed brakes, and he said, nope, it's just physics catching up with us. Now, this achievement took me decades to see through. It took vision, preparation, and a well-timed question at a key moment. But I think there's more to it than that, and that's what I want to make sure you understand. If I had never wanted it, would I have ever gotten into the Navy to fly? If I had never wanted it, would I have ever sought out an admiral that was still flying? If I had never wanted to break the sound barrier, would I have ever gotten into any of those planes flying off the carrier that I rode in? Some say I was just lucky, but I believe you make your own luck. And in this case, I truly believe that I did. I made my own luck, and it happens all the time. Here's another story. This one takes us to one of the most sacred places I've ever stood, Midway Atoll. And considering this is the 83rd anniversary of the Battle of Midway, it's particularly appropriate for me to talk about it. Long before I ever set foot on Midway, I wanted to, but it's hard to get to. It's a tiny ring of sand and coral in the middle of the Pacific, more than 1,000 miles from the nearest continent. Now, I was just a kid when I first heard about the Battle of Midway. Not from the history books, but from a TV show. It was called Baa Black Sheep, the 1970s drama about Marine pilots in the Pacific. The real Pappy Boyington and his Corsair squadron were larger than life. And for a kid who dreamed of flying, it kept me watching. Midway became one of those places that lived in my imagination, remote, sacred, and for the most part, completely unreachable. I didn't want to go there for the beaches. I wanted to go there for the history because of its strategic importance. In 2007, I gave it a shot. When I was on deployment as the officer in charge of a helicopter detachment on board the destroyer USS Chaffee, I saw that our ship's track was heading right up along Midway. We were going to get pretty close to about 80 miles or so. About 3 days out, I started working the angles. As the air boss on the ship, I directed my operations officer to schedule me for the flight at the closest approach to Midway. If I couldn't get out there and actually be on Midway, I was going to fly as close as I possibly could to it to get a good view from the air. Now, it was a long shot because 80 miles is still quite a ways to go in a Navy aircraft, and I had to stay within comms range. But I went for it, and on that fateful day that I went for that flight, when I went to combat for my briefing, I noticed that the ship had turned 15 degrees, just 15 degrees about 5 hours earlier, and that moved us more west than expected. And now, instead of about 80 miles away from Midway, I was going to end up about 160 miles away from Midway. And there was no way I could fly 160 miles away and back without running out of gas. So I lost my chance to see Midway from the air that time. Damn the luck. That time. But just because I don't get things done when I try them the first time, that doesn't mean I just stop. I never stopped thinking about Midway, planning for it, looking for opportunities. And then again, there was an admiral who helped me make it happen. 5 years later, in March 2012, I was asked to be the speechwriter for the commander of the United States Pacific Fleet. A month later, I found out he was going to be giving a speech to commemorate the 70th anniversary of the Battle of Midway in front of actual survivors of the battle on the island. Oh man, I leapt at that one, making sure that I was on the mission with the admiral. It was a moment 35 years in the making, proof that some dreams aren't supposed to be easy, they're supposed to be earned. Now, for those of you who truly aren't aware of the significance of Midway, let me explain it. It was 83 years ago on the release of this YouTube video, June 1942, where Midway became the turning point of the war in the Pacific, an ultimate victory in World War II. After Pearl Harbor, Japan had been advancing rapidly across the Pacific, and America was getting its head kicked in. The U.S. Navy was still trying to come up with ships to fight with after most of them had been sunk at Pearl Harbor. The few that we had were losing in battles. Then, Midway became Japan's next big target, a knockout punch to eliminate the United States Navy aircraft carriers that were still in existence. And it was also likely going to be a staging area for an invasion of our own mainland. But through a mix of broken codes, brilliant intelligence work, and incredible bravery, we knew what was happening, and we laid a trap. On June 4, 1942, our dive bombers found the Japanese carriers refueling and rearming. In about 5 minutes or so, they destroyed 3 Japanese carriers and later sunk a 4th. The Japanese fleet never recovered, and historians call that the greatest battle in naval history. But it came at a cost. Young pilots flew into withering fire, many never returning. Torpedo Squadron 8 launched knowing that they didn't have enough fighter cover, and they went anyway, and all but one died. So when I had the chance to visit Midway decades later, I knew I was walking on hallowed ground. And I walked that hallowed ground with a veteran of that battle, Sergeant Edgar Fox. I remember him telling a story about standing guard on the island. One night he saw something coming ashore on the beach and he thought it was the first of many Japanese divers coming to invade the island. So he opened fire. Turns out it was just a seal. But he wasn't embarrassed. He was proud to be defending that island. He knew, like all the rest on that island, that when the Japanese came, there was nothing to be done but to fight to the death or win. And when he talked about those nights, it was like he was 20 years old again. His eyes bright, voice strong. Even in his 90s, Mr. Fox moved better through the sand than we did. I will never forget him. Now, for all of those who served in the Battle of Midway, nothing remains really but stories, memorial markers, and legends. All the buildings and structures are giving away to nature, a forgotten island so remote almost no one can get there to experience. Today there are somewhere around 40 or so researchers who live on the island. They study the environment and the goonie birds that are everywhere, the albatross that nest on Midway by the tens of thousands. And their story is another difficult story we were told about while we were visiting that island. When they're born, they grow rapidly. Then comes the moment of truth, their first flight. All the chicks launch around the same time, and sharks from all over the Pacific know it. They gather at the beaches waiting. Each bird gets one shot. Either it flies or it dies. It's a brutal reminder of nature's stakes, and yet it's also inspiring because it echoes life. Sometimes you get one shot. You either fly or you don't. Even today, I still have a bucket list. Some things I've checked off, but others I know I will never be able to check off. Some dreams required timing that only existed once in a career or a season in life. And sometimes my luck didn't play out, no matter how hard I worked to make it happen. But that's okay, because if you dream big and only reach 60 to 70% of it, you've still done far more than someone who has never dreamed at all. The key is to keep adding to the list, to keep trying, to stay ready so that when your opportunity comes, you can seize it. So I want to encourage all of you who stuck it out to the end of this datagram to make your list, train, prepare, be ready when your break comes, and take that shot. The hockey great Wayne Gretzky once said, you'll miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So what the heck? Take lots of shots and make your own luck. Okay? All right, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for listening to this datagram. And if you've got time, go back and listen to another one, because unlike a lot of YouTube videos that comment on how to respond to current events, these datagrams are timeless. You learn how to win in life whether you watch them today or 10 years from now. So until next time, dream big and succeed.
Midway.
That's right, Midway right here. The atoll goes all the way around.
That's what makes it. It's a special treat.
Got swimmers out there, dolphins.